Hello, friends. Welcome back to Love Wrestling. Spencer Love here, bringing you a great pro wrestler, a great individual, and so much more. Veda Scott is joining me on the show. Not only a Quizplex champion, but I described it as like, and the numbers don't line up, but like as a baseball pen, you're a five-tool athlete. You can do pretty well anything in pro wrestling, whether it's commentating, whether it's managing the actual wrestling itself, obviously. But we'll get into that. I'd be remiss if I didn't just ask you how you were doing, and thank you for hopping on.
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm great. I can't complain outside of the fact that like I'm a little bit sunburned. I have got like the most Caucasian skin you possibly can. So if
Is
I'm
it still
outside
like
for
heat wave territory for y'all?
not
Or did
that
that break?
bad, but like when we went from, and I'm terrible with like the conversions from
Mm,
Fahrenheit to Celsius, but it was about 38 Celsius for the week prior to this. So now that we're sitting at like 28, 29, it's not heat wave, but it's
yeah.
definitely too much for me,
38 is hot. That's
It
that's
was
that's
terrible.
really hot.
Absolutely terrible. Like, I don't even want to get into it. It's like PTSD as far as I'm concerned. And we're here to talk about you because, frankly, you got a lot more going on. You've had a lot more going on as well throughout the pandemic. You were commentating for AEW. You're getting back into the ring as of a couple of months ago. How have things been as things are, I know it's so cliche to say, but like slowly starting to return to normal?
Yeah, so I am one of the people that didn't take bookings during the pandemic. The AEW thing came up uh and they contacted me about doing some stuff with their tag tournament over the summer. And it was at a time when I was like not really actively pursuing anything. I didn't
Mhm.
feel comfortable wrestling during the pandemic. I ended up doing one show that I felt okay with around that time. But in general, I wasn't doing tapings, I wasn't doing anything. They contacted me and like I was like, okay, I'm gonna like weigh the pros and cons here, but it seems like it's mostly pros.
Mhm.
And like the COVID protocols and everything were explained to me. And I talked to like friends who were there, and like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna fly for the first time in a year or whatever it was. And I used to fly
Almost
every
like
weekend.
cringing with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so I did that, and it worked out so well for me in terms of like kind of like just keeping me on the radar for people so they didn't like forget about me as a wrestling personality. And I got to do a lot of really great networking and really great experience. So it really worked out, but I was someone who assumed that I was not going to perform in front of or perform for an audience outside of like my own content creation, like my own like doing my own, I don't know, like Twitch streams and things, doing my own videos for the entirety of the pandemic. So that was kind of a
Yeah.
surprise. I have now recently, like, so I'm vaccinated now, and I've started to uh pick up bookings here and there kind of conservatively, but it's more and more now, both commentary and wrestling. Like I'm wrestling, well, I don't know exactly when this is airing, but I am wrestling. It's on
Friday.
July 18th, which is Sunday.
Neat.
for
Promotional material.
Yes, for WWR Plus, which is up in Massachusetts in the States, and they broadcast on IWTV. So if you have an IWTV subscription, you can watch that. But yeah, so I have a wrestling booking on Sunday. And then I have a couple of the wrestling bookings in the next couple of weekends mixed in with commentary. So I'm getting back at it, like slowly but surely, not going like too hard, only because I'm still like trying to like reacclimate myself to all of that. But
Yeah.
it's nice. It's nice to see. I saw people. I was last weekend. I was in Brooklyn, New York for a show, and I saw people that I hadn't seen in a year and a half. And I was like, I was vlogging the whole time. So like, I would say hi to someone. I'd be like, when was the last time we saw each other? And like sometimes it would literally be like a year and a half. But
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like
Absolutely.
that always because like we're very virtually connected. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I've been describing it for everybody as like almost, people take their gap years after high school that
Yeah.
almost doesn't count because you either forget everything because of what you do or because of just the time frame. But it's great to hear on that. And obviously the safety concerns with wrestling versus commentating had to be a decision maker, part of the decision process for you. But like this is really the most invested you've been in commentary despite staying in it for the last little bit in your entire career. How
Yeah.
great's it been for you to get back into it and get so wholeheartedly back into it?
So I've said this to a couple people because they asked me, especially around like the AEW stuff, was like, would you, if you had to choose, would you stop wrestling to just do announcing full time? And like, a couple years ago, I would have said absolutely not. And a couple years ago, like opportunities for me to stop wrestling to do something else involved in wrestling came up. And at the time, I was like, no, I'm not ready to do that yet. Like I was traveling, I was spending, months at a time in England wrestling, going to Japan wrestling. Like all of that was based around wrestling in ring.
Yeah.
And it's what got me into pro wrestling. It's what I love doing. And at the time I was like, absolutely not. Like I can't do it yet. I'm not ready for that yet. And now I feel like, and part of it, I guess, is maybe from going without wrestling and like I didn't like shrivel and melt away. But going without wrestling, but also just like feeling like I'm in a place with my commentary where I'm working really hard at it and I'm feeling really, really good about it. And I'm having so much fun doing it that I'm having as much fun or more fun than when I'm physically wrestling in a ring, that now if I had to choose, like I would like be at peace with that. That would be okay. Or if someone told me, like if you told me like, hey, just so you know, you wrestled your last match, but you can be an announcer full time. Like I'd be okay with that now. It would not be devastating the way it might have been a few years ago.
Cool to hear, friend. Is that because maybe, and I know you've talked about it before, but the storytelling aspect of pro wrestling, you've always talked about being attracted to. Do you find that you get maybe not easier, maybe more opportunity, but like the commentary side of professional wrestling, obviously you're front of mind telling the story versus in the ring telling it differently. You know what I mean? So is that maybe what's attracted you to it? Or how do you find yourself maybe preparing differently on that end of things?
Right. So like in terms of like opportunities in general, I think there's definitely more as a wrestler than as an announcer, only just
Okay.
logistically because like for example, as we saw with AEW, like there's a limited amount of jobs that are needed.
Yeah.
And like it's awesome when they cycle people in and out, but in the end, same as with independent promotions, like there's people who are very good at what they do on commentary and they're established and they've been established in that place. And it's not the same as like, let's add another match. You can't add another like 3 people on commentary. So there's a limited amount of opportunity. So that makes it difficult. But at the same time, kind of what you're saying is like when I wrestle on a show, I'm in one match. But when I commentate a show, I get to have a little piece of every match and
Yeah.
like kind of move the story along for every match. And it makes me feel like very much part of the show. And it makes me feel really invested in what everyone's doing. I get selfishly as a wrestling fan, I get to watch all the matches
Yeah.
like right there live when I'm calling them. And I just like being part of that process has been really rewarding for me. Like having as a wrestler, I know how important like even decent commentary is, like commentary that doesn't openly like disparage what you're doing or like kind of knows what's going on or isn't like openly sexist and racist.
I was just gonna say, like,
funny.
that's the example I've always got is like you've got like the sexist in jokes half the time that nobody's
Like
laughing at.
the heel commentator who's gonna like talk about the broads in the ring or whatever. Like, and that still happens today all the time. And it's so frustrating as a wrestler to have your own work number one disrespected like that, but also like just the logistical side of like as a wrestler you need to have your footage out there, and if your footage is disgusting or uncomfortable to listen to, no one's going to watch it. You can't send it around to get more jobs, and like you may have ruined an opportunity for someone in the future. You can't send AEW or upload a match on your like WWE profile that has disgusting commentary. It's embarrassing. So I feel like that's an important thing for me, and I'm trying to like there's some of us who are really like working to turn the tide on that. Like, yes, we want great announcing in terms of like the technical calling play-by-play aspect of it, but we will also want it to not be offensive and just wrong.
I guess like meet some sort of broadcasting standard.
Yeah. Like it shouldn't be ruining the work that's going into the match, but also at the same time, as a wrestler, I know like how when a mistake, for example, is like made in the ring and you hear the commentators like kind of point out the mistake as in like a move was missed or whatever, like the alternative is to just simply not do that, to help the wrestlers who are in the ring cover up if something's gone wrong, to sort of smooth things over. And I feel like that's an important part of commentary that I'm kind of trying to push is like, don't work against the referee and work against the wrestlers who are in the ring. Like it's all like every piece has to come together to tell a good story. And there's so many different ways that you can sort of smooth things out for the performers who are in the ring, who are doing a live theater with dangerous stunts, and like mistakes are made and you can help to fix them. And I think that's part of it for me too. I just feel like I I think I'm really proud. I just keep talking. Sorry if you want to interject with a
Don't worry,
question,
it
but
makes for
like
a great podcast guest when I don't have to ask a lot.
I worked really hard, especially right before the pandemic. I'd say in the year before the pandemic, I was wrestling at a level where I was really happy with what I was doing. I had been traveling around the world. I had been training so much. I was really happy with the matches I was having. And I finally felt like I kind of knew what I was as a wrestler. And then wrestling stopped.
Mhm.
But I I feel like I can still only contribute to a certain point as a wrestler. Like, even if I'm having matches I'm happy with, I'm still only one like 15 minutes of a show.
Yeah.
Whereas as an announcer, I can potentially like contribute more. And I don't know. I feel good about that potential to sort of like be a bigger member of the team. I don't know. Not to like overstate anything that I'm doing, but I feel like there's a lot of us right now as announcers who are really invested in the quality of the broadcast, just the perspective that we have, that we highlight the performers who are in the ring rather than fighting against them. And there's some of us that are really, really invested in that. And I think that's important.
Who are some of those people then? Because obviously, working for so many independent promotions
Mhm.
over the last little bit, you've worked with some of the best of the best. I'd have to assume, and not that I've been lucky enough to listen to some of the worst potentially, but who are some of those great individuals, or who are some of those people pushing it forward?
Oh gosh. So I have not had the opportunity to work with Alyssa Marino yet on commentary. But
Mhm.
she is someone who I know feels very strongly the same way I do about sort of progressing broadcasting and just highlighting people versus, like, again, I keep saying, like, fighting against them. Um she's someone who I haven't had the opportunity to work with yet. And a lot of times, like, she'll be doing commentary while I'm wrestling, or like I'll be doing commentary on the show, so therefore she didn't come in for the show. So like the paths we've not been able to sit at a table together, but I'm really looking forward to that.
Mhm.
Someone else I worked with just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago for the first time was Sam Leterna,
Cool.
who I think, yeah. So like, I know you're familiar with her, and if
Yeah.
she's done an interview with you as well, right?
Yeah, I
Recently,
think two
fairly
weeks ago,
recently.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So she's someone who she's focused really hard on ring announcing and hosting, but is starting to
Mhm.
do a bit more commentary. And she's someone else who like just sort of shares that vision of like have just presenting a respectful and fun product that
Yeah.
isn't like doesn't have that like that mean edge to it, if that makes sense. So much
Yeah, you can
commentary is
have
kind
fun
of,
and you can poke fun, but
yeah,
not be crass.
right. And like you don't have to make fun of what's happening in front of you. Like, pro wrestling makes fun of itself. Like, pro wrestling is ridiculous. Like, as an art form, it kind of makes fun of itself. And I think that there's a line between like, taking everything you're seeing seriously, but also not being so serious about it that like you sort of disparage the work in front of you. Same
Mhm.
so I know that you guys have been promoting it, but I've been doing the commentary for the past season of Enjoy Wrestling with
Mhm.
Rich Bacchini. And he is someone who I had, again, never had the opportunity to work with before, but really admired his work.
Yeah.
And he's someone who his method of announcing is very well, his background is in sports broadcasting. So it's very like hyper realistic. Kevin Kelly
Very,
and Ian
very play by
Riccaboni,
play.
yes, have very similar styles of like it's very like legit and sports announcing style. And
Yeah.
being around that, I've learned so much, just like how to, but he's still very funny, still has an awesome personality. And he's like sort of weaving in between the line of like, he calls the wrestling like it's very serious, like this is real, but also he injects a lot of personality into it. And I think someone like him, or like a Lenny Leonard, who oftentimes does solo, he's back with Ring of Honor right now for the
Yeah.
women's tournament, but does a lot of solo commentary where he kind of has to play both sides, his personality along with the play by play. These are people who I think are just like, they take what they do really seriously. And that's something that I really admire, because I think like I take everything really seriously in a fun way,
Yeah.
because I want the wrestlers who are watching the footage later to be happy with it, and I want fans to be comfortable watching the shows. And I think that's
Yeah.
a big thing, especially in the past year and a half we've come up upon, is that like there's a lot of fans who have been alienated from pro wrestling because they're just not comfortable with maybe the announcing. They're not comfortable with like even the online antics of some of the people involved. They're just not comfortable with the performers and the products. And I think that it's up to us to sort of provide not just a welcoming environment, but to know that that when you're listening, like you're not going to hear anything that's going to be triggering or overly offensive to you. Like we can be offensive in terms
Yeah.
of like edginess and offensive. I don't want to say that, but like there's a big difference between I don't personally use a lot of profanity, but there's a big difference between that and then just like some sort of like sexist joke that just turns someone off forever. They never
Yeah.
come back. So I
Hmm.
think that's important too, is sort of just understanding that like you're performing for an audience and we need to keep the audience around.
I love that mentality. I think that it ties very well, actually, to the one person that I did specifically want to ask you about is
Hmm.
Quinn McKay, because you guys seem, at least off the bat, to have fairly similar career paths. I know that she had wrestled prior to obviously signing with Ring of Honor, but moving from a broadcaster and a backstage personality, she's really just starting to get her feet wet as far as getting back into the ring as well. So
Hmm.
maybe just your thoughts on her, and if you've got any advice for somebody coming up with, again, a similar career path that you followed.
So I've never met Quinn. I don't know her at all. So I've only ever seen like her work with Ring of
Hmm.
Honor. Um, yeah, I remember when she was around as a wrestler for a while, maybe a couple of years. And then I guess I assume she's still been training this whole time.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, like, so for me, like, I was a wrestler and I didn't think that I would ever get into broadcasting, and I got really lucky to have some opportunities that as an interviewer to sort of introduce me because I never thought I would work for Ring of Honor. I trained at
Hmm.
the school, but that was at the time not like a pathway to anything,
Okay.
especially when like they the wrestling they were focused on was very different than anything that I was going to be doing. So
Yeah.
like I just had to I got like a pathway as an interviewer and learned a lot. So I mean there's still a lot of people there who you can learn a lot from working with. Their broadcast team is awesome. Ian Riccaboni is so talented. Caprice as a color commentator, I think it's something that was with Caprice is like, oh, we always should have known that he was awesome at this because he has such a personality and like the way that he just talks as a person or like cuts promos even as a manager is so just like vibrant and his cadence is amazing. And it was like when he started doing color commentary, I was like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
He's perfect for it. So there's a really strong announce team there right now. And I think a lot they've had Maria Canales, I believe, on
Yeah.
matches sometimes, and now they have Lenny for the summer, which is amazing. So there's a lot of people to learn from. I have no idea if Quinn intends to like focus on broadcasting or do more wrestling or what, but like there's a really great team there, I think, of announcers to work with.
Yeah. Now we talked about the commentary specifically, but even just as Veda Scott, when I listened to an interview you did, I think it was 2013, and you were talking about Reese Witherspoon and her role in Elected being one of
Mhm.
the initial sort of brainchilds for who Veda Scott is. But how have you sort of progressed as Veda Scott and as the character that is Veda Scott in the wrestling ring since then? And where do you maybe pull inspiration from now?
So when I first started wrestling, my trainer Daisy Hayes had like a very and Delirious as well had like an idea for how they train students and how they sort of like pushed us out there to kind of develop a character and develop a persona to have because both of them had very strong personas. Obviously, Delirious is like all persona,
Yeah,
so
I
like
was
had
just
a
going to
very
say, like, you're going to find his photo in the dictionary next to that.
right. There's no, whoa, sorry. I just kicked my table. There's really no element of like the real person there. It's all character.
Hmm.
And like maybe that was a strength, like to sort of like help us sort of evolve our move set and evolve what we do. Their process was to have us develop a character. Um, and there's some people that would disagree with that and say like, oh, you should be wrestling for a while and figure out what you do. And then other people say develop the character. It kind of depends, I think, on your goal, but this is the way that my trainers went about it. So we sort of
Hmm.
came up with the name and the character. And I said, like I said, Reese Witherspoon in Election like really did inspire a lot of the early promos and the early work. Started doing promos, came up with a look, came up with gear. So I sort of had an idea of what Veda was at the time
Hmm.
when I first started wrestling. And I think that's loosened up a whole lot, but maybe I needed that like persona in the beginning, especially
Hmm.
for things like promos and stuff like that. And then over time, like it's kind of just softened and evolved into like I guess Veda is still a lawyer because that doesn't like go away. But like Veda Scott was like a wrestling lawyer for a long time, very, very firmly. That was involved in a lot of the angles and the stories that I did, but also just the nature of independent wrestling. Like, because I'm not on television every week, because I don't work for the same promotion even every month all the time, it's hard to have like a concrete character line with that. And now it's more just like there's elements of a character. But it's sort of softened. I think it just kind of become me, and there's not a lot of like early Veda was very different than me in real life. And I think now it's just sort of like all kind of emerged, like between everything I do now with like Twitch streaming and Patreon, and there's like lots of opportunity, all the interviews I do, there's lots of opportunities to kind of like know me as a person more. And I think it's just sort of all blended together, social media. And I'm okay with that. Like it was like a semi-conscious choice to the point where now like it's all sort of like blurred together. And like when I'm called upon to like play more of a character or like do things that are more like persona based, I can do that. But I think overall it's sort of like softened into like much more blurred, and it's just sort of all one person now.
How much have you enjoyed getting into Twitch streaming? Because to be like completely honest with it, it's like the most old I've ever felt is trying to get into Twitch.
So I had not really any interest in it for a long time because I'm not a gamer. I don't play video games.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought that Twitch was mostly for that. And that if I didn't play video games, like there was nothing for me to stream, because I knew. So the first person that I ever remember knowing getting into Twitch, and she's someone who is still a huge streamer, was Jessica Havoc. And I remember like 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, like being at Jessica's house, and she had her whole streaming setup, or she would be streaming and playing video games for hours, and like she showed me like how everything worked, and I was like, wow, this seems really cool. I wish I could do something with it, but alas, I cannot. I do not play video games. But she's someone who's been streaming and like has a whole community for years and years and years, and like really built that up into, I think she was one of the first wrestlers that really had just she has a whole Twitch community. She continues to stream all the time. Like she really just made that into her own thing, and she was awesome at it. But I saw this and I was like, wow, this looks incredible. Sadly, I do not play video games, so I don't know what I would do. And then kind of over the course of the pandemic, I started like clicking around a little bit more on it and seeing what was out there. And it was actually Speedball who kind of said he wanted to start streaming, and he thought that maybe that could be a thing that he would be interested in doing. But in reality, and he says this now, that the real reason he got into streaming was to push me into also doing it, because he once we started to like have to learn how to do this together. Like we were in different countries. Like I'm in America right now, he's in Canada, and at the time that we started streaming, we were in different countries. There's been a couple months where we've been able to visit and stream together, which is really fun. Now we just kind of do it virtually. Like I'll green screen him into my streams. But like at the time, we kind of had to learn how to set up our streams on OBS. He got really involved in like building layouts. Like we kind of had to like crash course this together and figure it out. And so that made it more fun for me, even though like I still have moments, like especially like tech moments of frustration where I'm just like, I don't really know what's
I don't
going
get it.
on
I
here.
hope you guys are enjoying whatever might be happening.
Yeah. And then like my chat has to help me fix it. But I've learned a lot. And it also was really beneficial to me because at the time, right before I started streaming, I started getting into doing a lot of remote and virtual, like remote commentary for people's tapings. And so I kind of had to like work on a sound setup anyway for myself that was a little more permanent than like what I had been doing. So like it all sort of came together, and now like I have a setup that I'm like decently happy with. It was the setup that we have in Canada is much better, and I like it a lot more. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I thought that I wouldn't have anything to do or anything to say, and now I stream a lot of wrestling. Sometimes I just hang out and talk. I stream like infomercials and stuff too. Like, but it's become a really fun thing where I have my little Twitch community and like kind of the same people who join me all the time. I've been able to play like yesterday I played Among Us with the AEW crew, and I've done that like 3 or 4 times. That's really fun. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't streaming. But yeah, I've really gotten to enjoy it, and I didn't think I would. I thought I would kind of hate it. Or like I would get bored by it, but no, I really enjoy it. I'm doing like 3 or 4 streams a week now. I only stream for like 2 hours or so at a time because again, I'm not playing video games, and I feel like that's the one thing that you can kind of just do for hours. 2 hours is where I pretty much hit my wall, and I have to I have to
People
stop.
don't want to hear me talk for 2 hours either. I
Yeah, or
can
like
guarantee that.
I have like a 2 hour like playlist of videos, and then I'm like, oh, I'm tired. Okay, I gotta go. And that's about it.
Well, one of the things that I've loved most about Twitch, and admittedly, I've got to make sure I find out who I watched this on because I was just sort of going down the wormhole. But I was on a Twitch watch along a couple of weeks ago, sparking my next question. What inspired the Goldberg entrance at Nova Pro 11th Dimension? Because it was full on.
So people ask me a lot of questions, and I have a really great memory, but I also have no nostalgia whatsoever for my own wrestling career at all. So like, I don't save anything. I don't like that. I just don't. Like things happen and they're fun and then they're over. So let me try to remember.
It gives me a good excuse to have you back on again. Don't worry.
I think I don't remember. I was something from a promo for sure, because most of my like weird entrances come from a promo, but I genuinely do not remember. I don't at all, and it was
I'll send
not
it
that
to
long
you.
ago.
I'll send it to you on Twitter after this, but that means I get to ask you about her again.
It was
here
like
in the future.
it was like 4 years ago. It was not really that long ago. I know what it was we had like I was feuding with Faye Jackson, so we both sort of put together like Survivor Series style teams. But was I undefeated? I don't think I've ever been undefeated for long. I've had several like streak angles, but the joke is always like my streak will last through like 2 shows or like 1 taping. I cannot remember at all why I did a Goldberg entrance with the music and everything. I remember that part, and I don't remember why. It was from a promo. I don't know. It was some joke I made in a promo, and then I just like took it too far.
It may have been a joke, but let me tell you, it was glorious as well.
That's the story for honestly
time.
most of my like weird things that you'll see me do is like I made a joke and then I like decided to see it through. Like when Speedball wrestled as Shrek in England. That was just a Twitter joke he made, and you got to see it through.
It was absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to ask you as well, because I did ask him when I had him on the show, how has he influenced you wrestling wise? I made the joke, and it's something I stand by, that you guys are like literally the couple goals definition, but wrestling wise, how has he maybe affected your career, or how's he helped you out that way?
Oh my gosh, he's forced me to get so much better as a wrestler, mostly because he's so thoughtful about what he does, and he's really forced me to like think about what I do and what I want to be, and not to just do things for the sake of like doing them. Just to be like really deliberate and like just well, first of all, there's just the amount of training that we've been able to do together and the amount of traveling we've been able to do together. So like I was when there wasn't a closed border, like I was in the ring with him constantly and we were working on things constantly. And he's always training people. He's always running classes. He's always doing seminars. So like, I'm just around like this learning all the time. But the main thing was like, he's very, very thoughtful and very deliberate with how he plans his matches. And I think like, and how he watches wrestling and what he pulls from like watching wrestling. So he helped me like hone in on that a lot. So I think there's that. Also, there's just like just kind of just in general, like pushing me to just try different things, but like try them and like try to not just perfect what I'm doing, but just sort of like think outside of the box of what I thought I was supposed to be as a wrestler. And like, I can kind of think I figured out what I actually am as a wrestler, and that's different. It's different. Like I spent a lot of years like not knowing what I was doing and not being happy with what I was doing, but not knowing why. And now I think I've like become a lot more like thoughtful and controlled about how I approach pro wrestling. And I think that a lot of that is just from being around how much time he puts into what he does and like how much care he puts into what he does.
I love it, and it's evident. Like you see it with you, obviously, and you see it with him. You guys are terrific professional wrestlers and terrific individuals. And like I said, and I'll say a million times, thanks you so much for the time. I always like closing out with the fan questions that I get in. We'll save some of the best for last. So we've got from Pluggo: have you returned Taz's pen?
No, I have it. It's still very
nicely
safe.
Done.
I would like to return it one day.
Honestly, and full respect to Taz, I don't want to get any heat with a guy who can kick my ass, but I think at this point you got to hold on to her as long as you can.
I have it. It's been kept very safe. I do have it.
He can pick it up when he hops on a stream, right? We got this one from the standing streamer. You're from the home of Crayola crayons. Your favorite crayon color?
Cerulean.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice. And a good name too. Mine's Razzmatazz, but like it's not because of the color by any means, but
It's the
certainly
name.
exactly 100%. I'm sure there's about 15 different colors I like more, but I digress. Mike B asks, do you know all the words to the song from the Yocco's hot dog commercial? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No. Yocco's hot dog is in the town I grew up. It's a local hot dog chain. They have a commercial with a jingle, and I refuse to sing the jingle on the stream. And Mikey B has been trying to get me to sing the jingle on the stream for months now, and I won't do it now. I'm sorry.
Well, I think this, you know what? It ties me over nicely because I always like to close out both with people's goals in the near future and I like to close out with people plugging their social media. So let's maybe get a scoop here, Veda. How many subs to your Twitch channel and where can they find that Twitch channel would it take in a month for you to do it?
If I hit my sub goal, which I think is 75 subs right now, and I'm not there. I'm at like 45 or something. I will sing the Yocco's hot dog theme song.
Excellent.
On my stream. But my Twitch is twitch.tv/Veda Scott. I stream, the schedule changes a little bit, but I put it on my Twitter, which is at It's Veda Time. And I always post my schedule, which I haven't made for this week yet. I have to get the graphic made. And then I also have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/It's Veda Time. I put a lot of photos up there. Now that I've started doing shows again, I've been doing like little mini vlogs for my shows. They go on there, lots of different stuff. That's the main sources for me though, is the stream, the Patreon, and my Twitter.
All of them are things I would highly suggest checking out, friends, because prior to the pandemic, I had never interacted with neither Mike nor Veda, and through their Twitch channels, been lucky enough, and this is our first actual real face-to-face conversation, but getting in the comments section, getting the chance to get to know you guys has been a great time for me throughout the pandemic. And friends, I would highly suggest that you guys do the same. All of those channel links will be in the comments, or I guess in the description, wherever you may be watching or listening to this. But again, I couldn't recommend it more because I love wrestling. We like supporting great pro wrestlers, great commentators, great everything in between, but great individuals. And I can certainly vouch for Veda on that end of things. Veda, I'll say it a million times, and I guarantee when I send you the Goldberg clip after this, I'll say thank you once again. But thank you once again for hopping on the show. It's incredibly appreciated. I had a blast and I can't wait to do it again.
Thank you.
Anytime, friend. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully we've convinced you to subscribe, like, share, follow, leave a Yelp review again, wherever you may be watching, wherever videos are played, audios are listened to, or articles are written. This interview can be found. So thank you once again. For Veda Scott, I've been Spencer Love. We'll catch you on the next one.